Well, it's been a bit since the Big 12 had a Heisman winner, but maybe this is the year. Who better to tell us yes or no than a Heisman voter right here on Locked On Big 12.
You are Locked On Big 12, your daily podcast on the Big 12 Conference, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Monday, everybody. Welcome into Locked On Big 12. Drake Toll from ESPN Central Texas alongside Brett Ciancia of Pick 6 Previews. Thank you for making Locked On Big 12 your first listen every single day. Brett is a Heisman voter, and I in my opinion, the most connected media member in college football right now. When you have your Ken Pomeroy for basketball, that's what Brett Ciancia is for football. And Brett, as a Heisman voter yourself, you've been in the thick of this thing now for going on 4 or 5 years. And the Big 12 has not seen a lot of Heisman love recently. Maybe that changes this year. Do you see anybody in this league that could make a run at college football's most prestigious award?
Yeah, well, Drake, thanks for having me on. Appreciate the praise there. That's high praise. And, it's the best time of year. We got the preview magazine out. We got games finally coming close to being talked about and played. So we're almost there. And congrats to your success so far. You guys are blowing up. So keep it up. Yes, talking Heisman. Oklahoma had quite a run there under Lincoln Riley. He goes west. He lands another Heisman out at USC. But I think really for the Heisman for the Big 12, there's two types of candidates that can go win the award. And the first bucket is your conference champion contenders. And then your other bucket is just a stat giant, somebody that's putting up insane numbers. So I've got a couple candidates in both. First for the contenders, I have Texas playing Oklahoma in the conference title game. So naturally you look to those quarterbacks. You look at a Quinn Ewers, you look at a Dylan Gabriel. And I know that's kind of crazy. It's pretty chalky to have that as the top two this year, but
very chalky.
I know. And it's their farewell tour. I'm already regretting saying it. It's just, you think it's going to blow up here, but you go position group by position group. I feel like I found the top two there. Although the Oklahoma spot was really tight between Kansas State, TCU, even Texas Tech. So Heisman, do you look at some quarterbacks on those contenders? Maybe a Will Howard is being slept on, I think. If Kansas State finds himself back in Dallas, he's going to be great as a full-year starter. Guy out of my hometown, Downingtown, Pennsylvania, Chester County, where we're from. And then the other one, the stat giant category, look at Jalen Daniels at Kansas. If he has a full season under his belt, he already put up insane numbers last year on a per game and per play basis. But if you can extrapolate that out 12, 13 games, if they make a nice run, a 9 or 10 win season, he could definitely be in consideration.
You mentioned Brett Quinn Ewers, and to me, his numbers last year just weren't great. They didn't jump off the page, and they didn't put Texas in a spot to contend for a Big 12 title down the road. Do you buy or sell on a guy who now has pressure? There's somebody breathing down his neck with the last name Manning right behind him trying to get on the field.
Yeah, well, I think nowadays we're so used to seeing true freshmen or young freshmen come in and win Heismans and be All-American caliber and win conference titles. It is still rare. So I want to give the guy a second-year bonus here, get him a full offseason as a starter, and see if he can develop. And around him is what I really like. I mean, it's probably the best receiver core in the conference. I think they're top 5 nationally in my unit rankings at receiver tight end. Great offensive line in front of them. And, they have to replace the running backs behind him, but I like everything around Quinn Ewers. And I think at times he flashed. I remember all the way back in his first spring game at Texas, he aired the ball out like 60 or 70 yards in the air. That was his first moment, his breakthrough moment. And then he played Alabama tough. If you remember that game, was knocked out of it, or else maybe that game would have flipped. So, and the thing with his Heisman candidacy, if he were to put one together, he's going to have that national stage right away at Alabama week 2. So that'll really springboard him into the national spotlight if they can steal a W there.
Yeah, Brett. Dylan Gabriel, too, as somebody who led a team, an Oklahoma team that's supposed to be premier in the Big 12 to a sub-500 season. Do you buy or sell on him?
Yeah, so with Gabriel, I think he's going to get his numbers. I like the offensive design there. I was actually at Oklahoma versus Nebraska last year in Lincoln. Wanted to see the historic rivalry. It turned out it was one of the coaches was already fired. Scott Frost was knocked out of there. But no, I remember Nebraska scored first. It was 7-0. It was as loud as I remember ever seeing a stadium. Dylan Gabriel quieted that pretty quickly after that. He ran like 86 yards, 88 yards. He was shifty, juking around the field and and lumbered all the way down the field. So with him, you're getting a shifty runner. You're getting a guy with a good arm, make snap decisions. But I think with a full season of health will be the difference here because his legs are part of his game. And when he was banged up, he kind of took the quarterback run element out of there. I don't know if that was by coaching design to kind of keep him, safe and healthy, or if that was him shying away. But as a complete player with his legs being fully healthy, I think that he could put up some serious numbers.
Then, Brett, another guy you keyed in on, Jalen Daniels here, who is the preseason Big 12 first-team quarterback. Reminds me in a way of an RG3. Baylor was not a contender in the Big 12, and RG3 won the Heisman Trophy. It was a stat pad. He had the numbers, but was not on a team that was contending for a national championship. Do you think, even before we get into Jalen Daniels specifically, do you think we've reached a level of college football where your Max Duggan, your RG3, I mean, some of these guys who come from either smaller schools or teams who aren't in the mix to compete can still have a Heisman Trophy winner?
Yeah, I think they still can. The good thing about the Heisman is that the ballots are spread out pretty evenly. It's based on states that have the most FBS teams, but theoretically they're spread out regionally. And I know the West Coast has had a lot of trouble getting attention. I'm one of the weirdos here on the East Coast. I'm up till 2 a.m. every Saturday night watching the Pac-12 network close out in grainy standard def quality on my TV. But I don't think most are doing that. So it's a shame for the West Coast candidates. But the Big 12, there's going to be a lot of exposure there. But with him specifically, I really liked what we saw. He only got to play about half the season, came back for the bowl game against Arkansas, shattered all kinds of records in that one. I talked to Kansas coordinator Andy Kotelnicki. One of the biggest one-year turnarounds I've ever seen from an offense. They were bottom 10 for as long as I've been doing Pick Six previews in offense and overall. Last year, a top 10 offense. And the thing I really like is 10 starters back, Daniels included, obviously. So he's got a lot of firepower around him. And, I think with a full season, if he stays healthy, running that RPO, he's a sharp player. He's going to get a lot of stats.
Brett, I'm going to take you outside of the Big 12 here and college football as a whole. If you got to put all your eggs in one basket, if there's one guy you see and you say he's going to win a Heisman Trophy, who is it?
Whoa, that's a good one. You have a lot of good candidates. I think I'll start with this. I don't see a two-time winner. I don't think that we're going to see a two-time winner really ever again. There's just so many great candidates every year that I think the voters want to spread it around. So while Caleb Williams might still be the best player in America, I don't think he'll win the thing. So I actually look at a couple. I'll give you two. Michael Penix from Washington. I think he's going to get a ton of stats. And I've got Washington heading to Las Vegas to play for the Pac-12 title game in my national top 10, a lot higher than most have them. So I think leading a conference title run, he could be in there. Drake May also. I think that we saw flashes of him as a freshman, put up big numbers. You see him with his legs, too, getting involved. So those would be my top two. A wild card I'll throw in would be Jordan Travis, and not to spoil the preview book, but I have Florida State in the playoff, not only winning the ACC but making the playoff. Wow. So if that were to come true, if you lead off with that, if Florida State's in the playoff, that's going to be a big reason of that is Jordan Travis. He'd be in New York City if that were to come true.
Well, Brett, you've already mentioned you have Oklahoma and Texas competing for the Big 12 championship, but I want to know if you have one of those two teams, the winner of that game in the college football playoff, right here on Locked On Big 12, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It is your team every day. All right, Brett's not going anywhere, and we're going to find out all that. But first, LinkedIn Talent Solutions. When I tell you I got busy, I got bogged down my first week at ESPN Radio, my first week doing a lot of stuff. It's high school football is coming up and college football, so I really needed some help. I found an intern, and she is spectacular. LinkedIn Talent Solutions helped me get it done. They give you the right people, the right hire fast. And with the way they do it, there are these questions. You can curate the questions to figure out whether or not you want this person to come work for you. And so for me, I had to put, hey, do you like a fun, fast-paced environment? And can you work hard? Maybe that's something you value. I hope it is. Well, that's how I landed with a perfect intern to help me out. Purple hashtag hiring frame. You add it to your LinkedIn profile. You spread the word there. Simple, easy tools. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to and faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That is linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. LinkedIn.com/lockedoncollege. Keep in mind terms and conditions do apply. All right, Brett. Oklahoma, Texas. You got them in your Big 12 championship game. Do you put either of those teams, the winner of that game, in the college football playoff?
This year, I'm going against that. I don't think the Big 12 will get a team. And it's not because it's a weak conference or anything. When people try and compare conference strength, I don't like when they look at just who made the playoff. I mean, do you really think the ACC is stronger than some of these other conferences just because they had a Clemson dynasty the last 10 years? It doesn't really speak conference strength to me. If anything, it seems like if it's a dynasty, there's not much competition over there. But long story short, with the Big 12, I see 5 top 25 teams. So a lot of above average strong teams. I don't see anything top 5, though. My conference champ I have is Texas. The problem with that is they got to play at Alabama week 2. We talked about that. That's going to be really tough. I know they played them tough last year, and I know that you are catching Alabama early in the season with a new quarterback, new receivers, a younger defense, but I'm still going to side with Alabama at home on somewhat of a revenge tour for Nick Saban. So with that out-of-conference loss, that makes the margin of error razor thin. You can't really drop another game. So you got to go 9-0 in the Big 12 round robin and win a rematch with Oklahoma and Dallas. So I'm going to bet against that. While I do see Texas top 10 nationally, I don't see a playoff caliber there.
Brett, stop me if you've heard this before. Texas winning an off-season national championship and then not meeting expectations in a football season. And it's I think we are at a point now, every 3 to 5 years where we say, but this is the Texas team. This is the one that has all of the pieces. This is the one and they go 7-5. Why is this different?
Yeah, well, it's true. They're one of the most, if you look at preseason expectation versus results, I think they're one of the more overhyped every year, or whatever the 10-year average is in that category, ironically, along with A&M recently. But the reason why I'm going different with Texas, I don't really get caught up in the national buzz, the national storylines, stuff like that. I'm really a numbers guy. I try and take the emotion out of it. And numerically, this was a really strong team last year. You get a third-year bonus with Sarkisian. A lot of returning production. I mean, I think they're number 1 in offensive returning production, usually a good indicator going forward. I dig a little deeper in my stats, and I mean, they were top 20 in almost everything last year. So if you were just to cover up the helmet logo there and Texas Longhorns at the top of the page, you'd think that this is a solid top 10 team. So for those reasons, I'm trying to dodge the preseason hype. But when you look at the fundamentals, if you will, I still like Texas.
Well, look, nobody's going to call you foolish for putting Texas and OU high. These are the 2 most talented teams in the Big 12, and they should compete for a Big 12 championship every year. And you won't be crazy when Texas fails to meet expectations because it's happened so consistently. But, Brett, that Oklahoma team we've talked about, they were bad last year. They were really bad last year, and now you have them in the Big 12 title. Again, they've got the most talent in this league, them alongside Texas. How do they go to Arlington after such a dud under Brent Venables in year 1?
Yeah, so while Texas definitely has the stat fundamentals, Oklahoma certainly does not. This is more of a projection forward of what I think the defense could become under the second year under Brent Venables. I got a lot of guys back, but really the transfer market was huge for them. So this year I put in addition to the all Big 12 team, which is pretty common, I put an all transfer team in there just because there was so much player movement again this year. And Oklahoma landed 4 all transfer defenders from the Big 12 onto their team. So top 10 transfer class again. They're kind of reforming the roster, especially in the trenches. So I think the defense makes a serious step forward here in the second year under Venables. The offense remains a top 25 unit. And again, it's razor thin. So I think that Texas is my surefire pick. But that number 2 spot, they're really, if you look at my national rankings, they're all in a row. I've got Oklahoma 16th, Kansas State 17th, TCU 18th. So bang, 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 3 in a row. I could really see all 3 of those making it to Dallas, even a Texas Tech if a couple of things bounce their way. But yeah, right now with Oklahoma, it's more of a projection of maybe some defensive gains. The offense stays hot. But you trust some of the transfer and recruiting rankings a little bit more. We'll see.
TCU, Kansas State, Texas Tech. Those three teams are three that I believe will vie for a conference title. I think Kansas State, in my magazine, which is very short, half a page, I have the Kansas State Wildcats winning the Big 12. Brett, what do you like about those three teams? That they're not the dark horses per se. They're drumming up some noise, and they're teams that could win this league and kick out Texas and OU.
Yeah, well, we'll start with Texas Tech. I've got them 5th in the conference, 25th nationally. It's probably the first time in Pick 6 Preview's history I've got them top 25 preseason. And I think that's because they finally executed late in the season last year. They finally have positive momentum as a program heading into the next year. You saw them get some signature wins last year on their home turf, which had been a while. They beat Texas and Oklahoma both in the same year, first time ever. I got the bowl win. You have all this recruiting momentum under Joey McGuire. One of my favorite interviews of all time. This guy is Mr. Texas football. He was familiar with Pennsylvania high school football, where I was from. When I mentioned where I'm from, he was talking Big 33 game, and so I was impressed. He knows his high school football and very great personality. So yeah, I think for them to click, they're the veteran team. I think they got some key decisions from the NFL draft to come back defensively. Great quarterbacks to pick from. Looks like Tyler Shuck will be back leading the team. So that's the play there. I think it's a solid top 25 team. TCU, special season last year. I was always a Max Duggan defender. It was great to see his best performance for a season all the way through. Really a lot of magic. The TCU team last year felt like an old-fashioned college football magical season it seemed to happen almost every year. Unfortunately, it's gone away, but where a team out of nowhere would make a run, win a lot of close games, grind it out, and make it to the title game. So great throwback story. All that offense is gone. I mean, the proven parts of it. I think 9 starters out of there. But I do lean a little bit on the recruiting rankings there, and Sonny Dykes' stat profile recently. I think they're still going to be strong. So I don't see a full drop off from TCU, but I've got them 4th. And then 3rd, I like your Kansas State pick a lot. I love their offensive line, one of the best in the country. Their linebacker trio is also one of the best in the country. Both of those made my national unit rankings. Some key transfers coming in at running back and receiver to replace some playmakers. And like we mentioned, Will Howard, I think he's one of the most underrated guys, not only in the Big 12, but nationally. No one's talking about this guy and the impact he had last year. So, it would not surprise me at all to see Kansas State right back in there.
Brett, before we get your ideas on expansion and where it's going next, I want to tie the bow here with the Big 12 and how you previewed it. When our listeners go to the water cooler at work today or tomorrow and bring home one piece of information about the Big 12, one little take that you have that most people aren't talking about, what might that be?
Oh, that's a good one. Well, I think it would be the interesting part about if Texas can really finish off a conference title here in their final season in the league. I think that's going to be the national storyline and should be in Big 12 country just because of, it's been since 2009. It's been Colt McCoy. They've had a couple close calls. They made it to Dallas, I think, once with Ellinger. But, for such a blue blood, a powerhouse revenue machine, to not win the conference for that long, what would be their final 14 years in the conference, incredible. So, and we'll see. The last time a team left Nebraska, they got everybody's last shot. And I think that's going to happen as always. It always happens at Texas, but even especially this year, they're going to get everybody's best shot. Even the referees are going to be tough on them, I'm sure. Tongue in cheek with that one, but we'll see. It's probably the storyline. The other one that I was excited about until it got overshadowed by realignment was seeing these 4 new teams promoted to the Power 5 level. I mean, I was really excited when I was writing that. Got to study 4 new programs with UCF, BYU, Cincy, and Houston. That would have been a storyline. But, in the weeks since I published the book, the whole conference map has been realigned. So that would be kind of dwarfed by the bigger news. Yeah.
Well, Brett, I want to go right there where you hit that's expansion. These 4 new teams that are coming in this year, and then another 4 from the Pac-12 next year, right here on Locked On Big 12, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Brett, college football expansion it can't be done. It can't be done. As long as money exists, expansion will be there. But what is next, and what do you make of everything the last 2 years have brought us?
Yeah, well, the last 2 years, I guess this chunk of realignment was actually started by Texas and Oklahoma heading over to the SEC. And at that time, I was still kind of shocked by it because it was the first 16-team league, but I did understand they were still at least geographical borders. You could kind of argue that a little bit, and you could argue that they were two blue bloods heading to, the strongest conference in college football. So that one I was, coming to terms with. The USC UCLA to the Big Ten, that's where it really got out of control. That's where all the historical patterns were thrown away. That was going to be geography's off the table. Now we're just doing TV. We're doing TV money. Burn down the rivalries, burn down the history. So that one really started this next wave. And, I'm old fashioned with it. I love the regionality of the sport. I love having that West Coast conference to watch, see those teams compete against each other. I love the in-state rivalries, the regionality. So a lot of that's going away, which is a shame. Now, I do think there are some silver linings. I think especially I'm excited about this Big 12, this Big 16, whatever you want to call it. I think that there's a lot of promise there. I'm not just saying it because I'm on your show. I tweeted about it. I think there's a lot of promise there. Bringing Utah in, who's surging as a program right now, very passionate fan base, back with BYU, back with TCU, their old rivals. The Arizonas, I know they're not a border state, but if you look at a map, I mean, they're kind of bordering there. That'll be your Western Front. And Colorado, I mean, they were a Big 8 member way back in the day in Big 12. Yeah. So I'm excited about the Big 12's moves. I think they did a good job. And to all the people nationally that were saying how the Big 12 should fold, there's no future there. The whole way through, I was saying, look at their fan bases, look at their stadiums. They're very passionate. They might not draw the national TV money, but they're filling their stadiums, unlike the Pac-12, unlike the ACC. They're packed stadiums. I see them every day on Twitter. Very, very passionate fan bases. So I was buying in long-term on the Big 12. I'm glad they doubled down and expanded. So, I'm excited for that move. The Big 10, I'm not as excited about. I don't want to see USC playing Rutgers it's just going to be bizarre. But the Big 16, I like it.
Feels right. It feels like these 16 teams in some way make sense. Whereas you're right, Rutgers and USC is not going to be appointment television. But Brett, turning the attention to the ACC and Florida State and Clemson and Miami and grant of rights and everybody, all these buzzwords that have been thrown out the last month or so. What do you make of what's going on in the ACC? And do we see an NC State in the Big 12 in 2030?
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, I'll preface by saying it's not really my area of strength, the TV money. I never really viewed college football from that lens. I'll be honest. I'm not in the TV marketing world or the executives making these decisions. I love the football on the field product. So that's why every time realignment came up, I was always saying, hey, put Boise in the Pac-12.
Yeah.
Put them in there, and everyone comes back with, oh, look at the TV numbers, blah, blah, blah. So I look at it football first. So the way the football stands, I'd like to keep it how it is. I think that Florida State and Clemson belong out in the ACC. It is tough that they signed such a long-term deal. It seems they're stuck into that lower TV deal. And if you're Clemson or Florida State, you could probably argue you're worth more than that. So we'll see. Those are probably the two next dominoes. I'm still watching the Pac-4, the four teams remaining out there. It's a shame what happened to those four. Stanford and Cal, historically, they have the academics and all the Olympic sports, those championships. So I think they'd be primed to be picked up by somebody. If not, maybe go independent. I don't see them going to the Mountain West. I just don't think they would do that. Oregon State and Washington State, everything's on the table there. So the next dominoes are probably what's going to happen with that Pac-4. Is the Pac-4 going to double down and try and bring in Boise, Fresno, San Diego State, Wyoming, all those, or do those four get scattered across the map? So, I'm sure it'll heat up soon. It's never ending, but we'll see. No,
it never is, and it's just wild. Like taking in the last 2 minutes that you said. How many teams you mentioned, how many conferences you mentioned. It's taken over all of college football coast to coast, and it'll give opportunities, hopefully, for Wyoming and Boise to move up. But at the same time, it's going to kill an Oregon State or a Washington State, which I don't know. I guess it's for us talking heads to speculate on for the rest of time. But Brett, I really appreciate the work that you do in college football. And it's hard, tough work, right? There's me and Big Game Boomer and those guys putting out polls and brackets and rankings and stuff. But what you're doing is truly well researched. And I don't think, frankly, I know nobody does college football preview better than you do. Where can listeners find you online and purchase the best magazine in college football?
Wow. Yeah. I appreciate the praise, Drake. Again, thanks for having me on, and don't sell yourself short, man. You're doing great. I mean, I know how hard it is to build up a podcast, build up a brand. So keep it going, man. Like I said, I see you all over Twitter. Do a great job. So keep that going for 2023. Pick6previews.com is the only place you can find the book. And on there you have a couple sample teams, testimonials from the College Game Day guys. We do have the hard copy edition still shipping out. And the good thing is if you buy the hard copy, you get the digital PDF emailed immediately too. So for those 2 or 3 days it's in transit with USPS, you get your access to the copy right away. So hard copy, digital, all there on the site. And then follow at Pick6Previews for all season content.
Perfect. Brett, thanks so much for joining the show today. I have loved this show, the first 2 weeks of this show, and can promise listeners out there that since you all make Locked On Big 12 your first listen every single day, I will continue to bring on engaging and unbelievable guests like Brett. And we got even more coming up this week. Stick around for it. We'll see you on Tuesday. This has been, and it always will be, Locked On. Thanks for making it your first listen every single day. Big 12.